Like, is this really happening right now?
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So as you guys can tell by the title, I am doing a story time today, and this is my first story time. And I specifically chose this story because I feel like it's out of the ordinary. Like, it's not something females commonly do, so to hear about my experience, my first time doing it. So yeah, clearly by the title you guys can tell I did slide in somebody's DM, and this is the story about how it all happened. And if I could say anything, I've learned two things by the end of this whole story, so just stay tuned, bear with me throughout the story. It's not that long, but bear with me till the end to know what I learned. So without further ado, let's get right into this marvelous story. Okay, so it all started one day. Elise and I were going to Conrad, you know, to eat. Conrad is a place in my school where we eat. If you guys didn't know that, if this is your first video you're watching of me and you don't watch my college vlogs, make sure you do so because they're actually pretty lit. So yeah, we went to Conrad this Monday or whatever. So it's just me and Elise. We weren't meeting with anybody. It was just us two. We was going to eat real quick, and I don't even remember what we did afterwards. So we walked into Conrad. So we're walking back from the food line, and we saw this boy. Now this boy, I've seen him around plenty of times. He is part of a fraternity we have on campus. I'm not gonna say what fraternity. I'm not gonna say nothing, but he is a part of it. So like, I've seen him around multiple times, but like I never really acknowledged him, and he was just familiar. So I know I'm not the only person who does this, but like, I don't like when people stare at me. But if you're gonna stare, I'd rather you say something. So I said something, but I didn't say nothing to him. I said it to Elise. So I'm like, oh, he looks good. So she looks at him and she agrees with me. She was like, oh yeah, he does, whatever. But he wasn't paying no mind. He had headphones in, whatever. So we're coming back from the food line and he's going onto the food line, whatever. So once we both established that he looked good, I made it my key. I was like, all right, by the time we leave Conrad, I'm leaving with something, an Instagram, a Twitter, a number, a name. I was leaving that cafeteria with something. So me and Elise, we go to sit down, and we sat at a two-person table. It was a high table, and it was just us two. Like, nobody else could sit. So I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, yo, how am I really about to go about this? Like, what am I gonna do? So he's walking back from the food line, and he sits at a table that's like for 4 people, but he sits by himself. So off rip, I found that kind of weird. I'm like, why is he by himself? Like, he's part of a fraternity. I know he has mad friends. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with being by yourself, but I'm just never by myself. So I was like, okay, that's sus. He probably, and then so then Elise is like, oh, he's probably waiting for a girl. And I'm like, don't say that. No, he's not. So boom, now we sitting at the table and we start plotting. So I'm like, all right, well, I have to find him on something. So didn't know his name, didn't know nothing. I just knew the fraternity that he was a part of. So they have their own Instagram page or whatever. So I was on the Instagram page seeing if he was in any pictures. Did they tag him? He was in no pictures, y'all. So I'm in my head, I'm like, okay, he sits by himself. He doesn't take pictures. Like, something is off with him. Like, he looks good. Why are you not taking pictures? So I was just confused. So he wasn't on his fraternity page. So then we remembered that he was a part of another organization on campus. It's not a fraternity or anything like that. It was just a regular organization. So I'm like, boom. So Elise, she looks up the organization. She's going through the pictures. We found pictures that he was in, a few, but he wasn't tagged in them. So I'm like, oh my god, what are we gonna do? So I'm like, let me see your phone. So I take her phone, and yo, I knocked my soda on the floor. I knocked my soda on the floor. So I'm already looking like a fool. And mind you, we kept making eye contact. Like, I wasn't making eye contact with him, but Elise would occasionally look over there, and she was like, yo, he's staring over here. But like, she would do it so much, it was obvious we was talking about him. And then I knocked my soda over, so that just caused even more commotion and all eyes on me. So I'm like, oh my god. So I take her phone. So I'm looking through the organization's pictures or whatever, and I found one that he was in. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go through the likes. Found him. So yo, I found his Instagram. So now his Instagram was private, I believe. So now I had his Instagram, but what was I gonna do with it? Like, I didn't want to just follow him because that was gonna be so weird, because we did not speak at all the entire time being in Conrad. So I'm like, if I just follow him out of nowhere, he's gonna look at me like she's a creep. Like, how you don't speak when you see me, but you magically found his Instagram out of nowhere, yo. Like, that was really some creep stuff. Like, the story is a lot shorter, but it took us a minute to find his Instagram, and we was really looking through things. There was a time he got back up and he went back online for the food or whatever, so I was getting up to throw away my trash. So the first time when we had seen him and I first established, like, oh, he looked good, we had made eye contact and we were staring at each other for a minute, but I looked away because I don't know, I can't make eye contact with people for a long period of time, so I looked away. So then the second time when he had went to get food and I went to throw out my food, when we was coming back, we met again. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to stare this time too, and I'm not losing eye contact. Like, I feel like eye contact is a way to let somebody know that you want them or whatever. So I wasn't looking away this time, so we made eye contact again and we held it for a little bit, then he looked away. So I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously? So I'm like, okay, come back to the table. So I told Elise, I'm like, we just made eye contact. Like, that honestly means something. It might sound crazy, but yo, if you and somebody make eye contact for a long period of time, that means something. So whatever, sitting back at the table. So he's still at the table, he's by himself. I'm like, yo, I'm really about to go sit over there. Like, he's really by himself. Like, and then now that we had made eye contact so many times, I had something I was gonna say. So I was gonna go over there and I was gonna be like, so you can stare but you can't speak. But long story short, that didn't go as planned. So now the boy, he was getting up and he was getting ready to leave, and I'm like, no, no, no. Like, how is he leaving? And we no, where is he going? So I'm like, Elise, we gotta go, we're leaving now. Long story short, he ended up leaving way before us. So now I'm like, okay, now all I got is this boy's Instagram. What am I about to do with it? So Elise is like, oh my god, just follow him and then DM him. And I'm like I don't know, she didn't understand where I was coming from of how weird that would have been. Like, I like switch sides. If a guy was to do that to me, like if I was to see a guy around a lot and out of nowhere he just followed me on Instagram, I'm gonna be like, how the heck did you find me on Instagram? Because I don't really have anybody from my school on Instagram. So, and like, you know how now Instagram shows you your mutual followers? We probably had like 2 mutual followers. So I would have been like, how did you find me? And I would have found it so weird because you couldn't speak when you saw me, but you finding me on Instagram and following me. That's just weird. We had ran into one of our RAs, so I had told him the situation. Well, we didn't tell him the situation, we used like a scenario. I was like, if a girl randomly follows you on Instagram and you've seen her a lot throughout that day, you gonna be creeped out? He was like, no, I'm not gonna think nothing of it. Long story short, they ended up putting the battery in my bag and I followed him on Instagram, y'all. I was so scared. Like, I was so scared. I wanted to unfollow him, but I'm like, nah, forget it. So I got the little notification. It was like, so-and-so accepted your follow request. Now, normally you would get another notification like, so-and-so is now following you. So I didn't get that. So I'm like, oh, so he think he just gonna accept my following request and not follow me back. Okay, never mind, plan off. But then I went to Instagram and he did follow me back. I don't know why I didn't send a notification for that. So I don't think, we didn't do the whole liking picture thing, because that's another sign on Instagram. So first you got the eye contact thing, that's a sign. Then the Instagram thing, when you follow each other and then you like pictures and then they like it back. I don't think we did that though. I don't think we did that. So I slid in the DMs, y'all. I hit him with the emoji that looked like this. Yeah, so he sends it back. So I'm like, oh my god, like, am I really doing this right now? Like, this was really something so different for me, y'all. Like, it was just weird. Sorry, y'all, my camera cut off. But yeah, so he sends the same emoji back. So he goes, if you see me first, then speak. So I'm like, vice versa, what's your name? Because like, we're having this whole conversation and I still don't know this child's name. And then he goes, what's your purpose of sliding in my DM? Don't mean to sound rude, but get straight to the point, baby girl. Yo, I kid y'all not, he had me so up this day. Like, who are you? Like, didn't want to tell me his name, didn't want to tell me where he was from. Then you gonna rush me talking about some get to the point. Like, I don't know who he thought he was. He must have thought he was God. But he really had me fucked up. So then he goes, if that's the case, cut the small talk, send me your number and I'll text you when I'm free in another half an hour or so. Yeah. So I just sent him my number. But I just found the whole thing so funny. Like, he was just different. So he had my number. I had no idea where this boy was from, his name, none of that. So boom. He texts me a few hours later. He's like, I figured you were from New York before you even sent me your number. So I'm like, how you figure? And then he's like, I know, LOL, your whole aura. So I was like, LOL, interesting. Well, I see you're from New York too. What part? And I knew that because of his number or whatever. So yeah, so now I knew that he was from New York. That's the only thing I knew. And it was an assumption off of his number, but that didn't really mean much because it doesn't mean much. So I knew he was from New York, still didn't know his name, didn't know nothing about this kid. And he didn't want to tell me anything unless it was in person. So he was just so weird and I'm like, yo, something is wrong with this boy. So we met up the next day by a basketball court by the MLK. I probably showed it in the vlogs a couple of times, but we call it the court. So we met up over there or whatever. So he had his car. So I'm walking to it or whatever, so I get inside and we're sitting. So then first thing first, because like when I said that he was from New York, he didn't confirm it. He was like, maybe, maybe not. He was just being freaking weird. I don't know. So we get in the car. First time I asked him, I'm like, so what is your name? son was not trying to tell me his name. He was like, what's your name? So I was like, yo, you dead serious right now? So I told him my name, and I'm like, now what is your name? And so he tells me his name or whatever. I was dead about to say his name too. But he told me his name. So then I'm like, okay, where are you from? What he said, what he told me that day. This child gonna tell me he from Wisconsin. So I looked at him. Wisconsin, whatever. He told me he from that place with a W. So I'm looking at him. So I'm like, so why do you go to DSU? And then I don't remember what he said. He said some BS or whatever. And then I'm like, this your car? So he like, yeah. So I'm like, so how'd you drove from Wisconsin to Delaware State? He was like, no, I shipped my car out here. And I'm like, okay, so every break you pay for plane tickets to go home. So he's like, yeah. So I'm just looking at him, and I'm like, yo, you dead serious? So then he was like, how you get in a car with a stranger, don't even know my name, where I'm from? And I'm like, yo, this is all your fault. You could have told me all of that yesterday, but you didn't want to. So then he goes, oh, where'd you think I was from? So I was like, I thought you was from New York. And he's like, yeah, but what part? So I'm like, I don't know, you look like you could have been from Harlem or Brooklyn. And then he was like, why one of those or whatever? And I'm like, cause like, if you're from New York, you can tell what part of New York certain people are from. Like, people from Harlem dress a certain way, people from Brooklyn dress and act a certain way, same thing with Queens. Like, people from everywhere have a distinct aura about them. So yeah, and I told him that. And then he was like, all right, well, which one would you think I was more from? I was like, I thought Brooklyn at first, but now I think Harlem because you don't really look like a Brooklyn person. So he goes, that's interesting. So he starts laughing, and I'm like, what's funny? And then he's like, because I am from Brooklyn. So I looked at, and I'm like, yo, so you're a liar already? Like, I just met you and you're lying already. And then he was like, oh, you didn't see my license plates when you got in the car, you need to check, you need to be more aware of your surroundings, blah blah blah. So I'm like, you just need to not lie and not be so difficult. Like, what is the point of all of this? And I'm like, is your name even really what he told me his name was? It was, but like, why did you tell me you was from Wisconsin? Like, and I was blown when he said that, because I didn't even know where Wisconsin was. I'm like, where is that? He said the West Coast. I'm like, what? So yeah, that was our first in-person encounterment. So a couple things I learned about this boy already. He's difficult. He's a liar. And he's just so extra. Like, he was weird off rip, and that might have been a million red flags right there, but he was fun. That's what it was. Like, the games were like, he played so many games for me to just know who he was, but I enjoyed playing them because it was fun, because like nobody ever did that before. So it was just, I don't know. All right, so one day, oh, I also learned that he's not a texter. Like, he would rather speak in person. So this one day we was texting, but he told me to meet him at the MLK or whatever. So I walked to the MLK. So now we're sitting, just talking, nothing of it. So then his phone starts ringing. So he's like, oh, excuse me. He had manners, dog. I'll give him that. He had manners. So he's like, oh, can you excuse me? So he gets up and he walks away to answer. So y'all know how you can tell if somebody's arguing or something while they're on the phone. So I was able to tell he was arguing or something on the phone. I know who he was arguing with. It wasn't my place to ask no questions. So then he comes sit back down. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, da 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 da. I'm just looking at him. I'm like, are you good? He's like, oh yeah, I'm cool. It was nobody important. This sounds so like cliche. It's nobody important. That's when it's probably somebody important and they don't want you to know who. So whatever, we're still chilling in the MLK. So like 5 minutes go by and some girl comes up to him or whatever. So basically this girl had came up, I guess she was friends with a girl that he used to talk to, he currently was talking to, whatever. But y'all know how female friends are. So she's just, I don't know, basically in defense of for her friend. She never confronted me. She didn't look at me, none of that. She had no reason to. That wasn't my man. So she's just wailing on him. So he's like, oh, you wailing, you making a scene, da 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 da. It's not even like that, blah blah blah. So I'm just sitting here, and in my head, like, I'm not stupid. So I'm like, really, nigga? So I'm just watching the whole thing go down, and I'm like, alright. So not so long after, whatever, the girl had left. So I'm just looking at him, because I'm just so like in shock. Like, first you get a call, you have to get up and leave the table for. You come back, a few minutes later, a female is over here cursing you out for her friend. And like, it wasn't ever my place to get mad or anything, because like, we never established anything, nothing, but I just found the whole situation funny. So then he was like, oh, don't even mind her, these DSU girls are crazy, don't even know what they be talking about. So I'm just like, I ain't saying nothing about it. I wasn't even paying her no mind. So boom, he was like, oh, but I gotta go to class in like 15 minutes, so I'm gonna text you later. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go back to my room. So I'm telling Elisa about what just happened, and yo, This was just so funny. So something had told me to go back to his Instagram, because like I was telling you guys earlier, we never did the whole liking picture game. So like after he accepted my request, because this thing was private, I didn't go through his pictures and none of that, because like I seen you in person, I already know what you look like or whatever. Just went straight to the DM. So I was like, you know what, let me go check his Instagram page or whatever. So I'm scrolling down his pictures. I come across this picture of a girl, and she looked familiar, like she went to our school. So I click it or whatever. The picture was from maybe beginning of January. So I click the picture and the captions all like woman crush every day, something like that. So I'm like, yeah, that's how I was like, that microwave is how I was like, that was the red sign saying stop, don't go. And I'm like, what? Still wasn't mad. We ain't established nothing, none of that. So I continue scrolling through the Instagram. I'm like, okay, Woman Crush Wednesday, let's not be childish. That probably don't even really mean nothing. So I'm scrolling through more, and he didn't really have any more pictures of her. So I go back to that same picture. Now I'm reading the comments. So she commented on it. So then I click her Instagram page, and her Instagram page was public, y'all. So now I'm going through her pictures. Yo, so now I'm going through her pictures, and she had mad pictures of them. Like, her page, you can tell she's in a relationship. His, he looked like he's single with a crush. So I'm like, are you serious? Like, is this really happening right now? So I was just so confused. I was so confused. So I'm like, all right, so now what's my next step? I text him. I'm like, so you have a girlfriend? He goes, no. I'm like, okay, did you have a girlfriend before you answered your phone in the MLK? How about that? Because, you know, they probably could have broken up, whatever. He's like, what are you talking about? Where is this coming from? He's like, if I had a girlfriend, I would have never texted you. And I'm like, no. If you had a girlfriend, you would have texted me and just never told me you had a girlfriend. Kind of like you did. So, long story short, we ended up going back and forth. But this story was to tell you about the time I slid in his DM. So, we're going back and forth. Haven't spoken to him since, but now the lesson that I learned from sliding in people's DM, number one, don't be afraid to shoot your shot. Like, you don't always have to wait for a guy to come and approach you. Because I have learned, like, some boy that goes to my school, where he's from, he said it's more common for females to approach the guy first. In New York, females definitely don't approach the guy first. But moral of the story, don't be afraid to shoot your shot. If you see something you want, go get it. You gotta be that go-getter, honey, because not everything in life is going to come to you. Number two, but we knew that though. 9 times out of 10, if he look good and he's real to himself, he probably got a girlfriend somewhere. Another lesson, do your research, y'all. Do your research. Like, I knew this boy from, like, I seen him around campus, but I knew nothing about him. I knew nothing about him. All I knew was a fraternity and an organization he was in. Didn't know nothing else about him. So make sure you guys do your research. Overall, the whole situation didn't really affect me. Like, I wasn't mad about it, wasn't sad about it, none of it. It was actually really comical to me, because I'm like, is this really happening right now? So that concludes my story time, my first story time. I feel like I kind of, like, I could have ended the story right after I slid in his DM, because that was the point of it, but I want to tell you guys the aftermath of it. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed. Comment below if you want to see more story times. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel and catch up on my vlogs if you are new, and make sure you follow me on all my social media. My Instagram and my Snapchat are now the same, k.chantrese, and my Instagram is now kchantrese, no dot, no underscore, nothing. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, y'all.